Welcome to the More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hi there, I'm DJ McGuire, and I'm your conservative Democrat from Suffolk, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Kushmiter. I'm your liberal Democrat in Kensington, Maryland.
And I'm Greg Matuzak, your liberal Democrat, also from Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'm Cliff Dunn, your Republican from Newport News, Virginia.
I'm Helena Henry, your evangelical conservative from Colleyville, Texas.
And I'm Kevin Kelton, your Jewish Democrat from Los Angeles, California.
Oy
with
vey.
over 15,000 downloads last week. That's 15,000 downloads. The More Perfect Union is one of the fastest growing political podcasts in the nation. The More Perfect Union can also be heard on iTunes, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and written commentary. And if you haven't done so already, check out some of our midweek More Perfect After Dark podcasts, where you can hear what we talk about once the official show is over. Well, we had a chock-full week of news. We're not going to get to everything tonight, but let's start with the economics of the country. The jobs report came out on Friday morning, the first Friday of the month. Once again, it was a stellar one of the best ones we've had in a long time. DJ, what's your take on the information and how the Trump administration embraced it?
Well, it is good to see that Democrats are remembering the underemployed and the discouraged workers again after forgetting them for 8 years. Of course, the Republicans only took 6 weeks to forget both categories. But to be fair, they both went down, as did the unemployment rate. All three rates went down. Whether that is a continuing legacy of the Obama administration or the result of Uber Alice Donald imposing his rule in the country, that's something for the two parties to argue about.
Well, it is the first real jobs report. These numbers are real, not phony. Not phony. Sean Spicer said so. It's not phony.
So we're having some fun with this, but I'd actually like to know what everybody thinks. So I assume that the Democrats here, I certainly feel this way. We think that this is actually a continuation of the Obama economy, which was, in my opinion, doing pretty well for the last 6 months to a year. But I'm curious, Cliff and Helena, you guys are the conservatives on the panel. DJ, you're a conservative too. What do you guys think? Is this a continuation of the existing economy, or is this a function of the fact that there's a renewed optimism because of the election of Donald Trump?
Well, I think look at what Trump's own economic advisor says about the report. He says that we should not attribute the current success of the economy to Trump's administration. So that's where I land on it.
Which advisor said that?
I don't remember the name. Does anyone happen to know who it was?
It was Vladimir Putin.
Hold on. Looks like it was his National Economic Council advisor.
Okay.
So Gary Cohn.
All right. So he's saying it's autopilot.
Pretty much.
The economy's on autopilot.
These are the remnants. Yes, this is the remnants of the Obama administration.
And I think he's right because, frankly, Trump hasn't done anything on the economy. He's talked about this, that, or the other, but he hasn't actually enacted any particular policies.
I was going to say the
yet.
exact same thing.
So.
I mean, he's neutral at this point in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, where we are to date is that the Trump administration has not enacted any policies, but there have been some indications that consumer spending picked up after the election, et cetera, et cetera. So there is some evidence of more optimism in the economy. That said, I broadly agree with Helena and DJ on this. Let's see where we are in 3 to 6 months.
Can't an argument be made that, a renewed sense of optimism, a belief that Donald Trump is going to lower tax rates, corporate and individual tax rates, that his pro-business policies are going to goose the economy? Can't an argument be made that that has something to do with this?
If people could believe what he says, yes, but Donald Trump is living proof that the proof in the pudding is in the eating.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the markets, as I think everyone knows here, I did not vote for Hillary Clinton, but one of the pre-election arguments for Hillary, I thought, was market stability, and I feared what would happen should Trump win the presidency in the markets. And the outcomes that I had anticipated didn't happen. They didn't materialize. So I think from that perspective, I wouldn't say he's doing it well because I don't think we can attribute it to him, but things aren't as bad as they could be, perhaps.
Well, they materialized for about three hours in the middle of the night on election night when
Right.
the
Right.
There was that
The shock and awe. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, the other story that was in the news this week. Well, there were many stories in the news. The one.
I was going to say, let's, lots of stories.
But while we're on the subject of the Trump administration, Mike Flynn somehow, even though he's no longer in the administration, was in the news again. Who wants to field this one?
Oh, sure, I will. So it turns out that while he was working for the Trump administration, it turns out he was also working for the Turkish government.
Trump campaign, not the administration.
No, Trump campaign.
Yeah.
Because they were,
You said the Trump. You said the administration.
No, the administration also. Because they had.
Yeah, he did. He consulted with White House counsel about whether he should register as a foreign agent while he was working as NSA.
Right, and everyone knew supposedly except for Trump. They had even talked to Pence. Should have even known about this.
Yeah.
So right, and it was. This is pretty heavy stuff at this point. He was doing counseling work for the Turkish government. So, yeah not a good day for
stuff.
Mike. Yeah. And he had been writing op-ed pieces for the Washington Post. It was not a good day for him.
It's very weird. It's really weird.
Yeah, and it wasn't millions of dollars either. It was 500,000, I think.
I should be careful about this when I say no, it's not weird. It's not weird because of who it was. It was President Erdogan, who has an authoritarian streak and who's been cracking down on dissent, much like Trump's other friend Vladimir Putin. This is this is the crowd that they work with. They work with people who don't like little fun things like self-determination and democracy, and this is just another example of it.
So really what you're saying is that so far we're finding out this is the best administration that money can buy, just that other countries' money can buy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of scary. Yeah, that's the word, scary. Scary, kind of scary.
Terrifying, horrifying, bizarre.
Horrifying, bizarre. I've got lots of, I got that new toilet paper with different words on it every day. So I've got lots of synonyms.
You know what else is scary? When you're told that your health care insurance plan is going to go away because they're going to change all the qualifications under the new GOP-sponsored Repeal and Replace Act, or as DJ likes to call it,
rinse and repeat.
No, what is really scary is when you have an administration that says you can, if you like your plan, you can keep it, and then people spend the next 5 years finding out that's not true.
Cliff, you're in history. You're in the history books now.
Yeah,
Come on,
we can't
let's talk about where we are.
Hang on, folks. Cliff is remembering history, and Trump is repeating history here. Because the fact of the matter is, if you look at this, it was Speaker Paul Ryan had this little PowerPoint slide where he talked about how they're going to fix health care. They're going to come up with this, what I call the American Unhealthy and Careless Act, which they acknowledge doesn't actually do everything. It's an imperfect bill that gets the ball rolling. Then they'll throw up a bunch of executive orders, and then they have promises of future fixes later down the line. Where have we heard this before, I wonder?
Well, what we have to understand about this particular bill, which just came out of 2 committees this week with, an astonishing 16 hours of debate after, a secret writing process. And I think it was passed out of one of the committees completely without amendments. This is the answer to the reconciliation instructions that were attached to the budget resolution that was passed at the very beginning of the year. This bill can only deal with government revenues and expenditures. So we can't get into the meat of the regulatory policy parts of the Affordable Care Act. This is simply moving the money from one column to the next to try and Actually, I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to do, because the whole thing reads like Paul Ryan's freshman poli-sci project, where he was like trying to make the conservative case for Medicaid reform. That's what the whole thing sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like healthcare reform at all. It sounds like something a 19-year-old kid who thinks he's smart would write.
Right, and the issue is that you have Republicans trying to please a lot of different groups, and they're making nobody happy because of that exact issue. One, that they're trying to get everything done through reconciliation so that they don't have to make any actual rule changes and affect insurance regulations and just keep it focused on tax and spending. But I think the other thing that's happening here is the House is looking towards the Senate. And rather than trying to figure out what sort of arrangement here would really work with our vision of how the government should operate, they're looking at what's going to happen in the Senate and what do we think we can get through. And I think you're ending up with this Frankenstein-type bill that doesn't really make anyone happy as a result.
With all due respect, I think it's simpler than that. We are talking about a Republican Party that is essentially shifting from the principled limited government party, of which I used to be a member, to a party that is now looking for big government privilegism. And if you look at this, it is designed as upward redistribution of income. They take the subsidies and they turn them into tax credits, and they spread them out so that more middle class Americans can get tax relief with their health premiums. But that means that people who are less fortunate get less relief.
Right, it's not means
they're rearranging Medicaid so that essentially the future of the program relies on a bunch of state legislators who are so utterly ignorant about this policy that they still think certificates of public need regimes are a good idea in 2/3 of the states in this union.
DJ, do they even know what certificate of public need regimes are?
Of course they don't. They're state legislators, for crying out loud.
Well, tell our audience what they are.
Oh, a certificate of public need. It's essentially, if you want to build a medical practice, you have to file a form with the state that says, yes, our region needs my little facility. And every other incumbent facility, i.e. your competitors, can lobby the government to say, oh, no, we don't need no stinking competition. You can deny his application and we'll just keep our monopoly and oligopoly profits. You don't have to mess with that. It is a ridiculous, restrictive, oligopolistic regime that is designed to raise prices and ruin quality, and they actually think it's a good idea. These are the people to whom we are putting the fate of the Medicaid program, which in my opinion is bad enough as it is. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Medicare is how we kill poor people quietly. Medicaid is how we kill poor people quietly in America. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, DJ, you got
the fact.
Well, and the other thing is that the...
I know. Medicare is how we kill old people quietly in America. I understand that.
Wait, but DJ, seriously, you are just a bundle of laughs tonight.
I know, aren't I? But this is about how to make it change as little as possible, except increase benefits for middle-class white voters who put Trump and the Republican Congress in office in the first place. This is about the transition of the Republican Party to big government privilegism, and frankly, it's a tragedy to watch.
Well, and the thing about the Medicaid, what they've written in with Medicaid is they're trying to phase out the Medicaid expansion by 2020, and they're doing it by capping per capita what they're willing to pay for Medicaid patients, and and it creates this whole new formula. And like I say, I'm not joking when I say I think this is something Paul Ryan's been fantasizing about since he was 19 years old. This is his raison d'etre into all of politics, I think. But what the unintended consequence is going to be is that some states are going to take the expansion now before it goes away, so that they have it over time, because the Medicaid expansion has been popular in the states that do have it, and the states that don't have it now stand to lose quite a great deal under these new funding formulas.
So I want to understand,
Rebecca, I'm sorry, Kevin. Rebecca, I'm very disappointed in you. Everyone knows it's raison d'être.
I studied German in high school, okay? I'm totally prepared for this administration, not for when the French come marching in.
Oh, when the French come marching in.
I don't think that's how the song goes, Cliff.
So just to be clear, what Rebecca said, though, the states that do not expand, those are red states, though, right?
They are
the
red
people
states.
who are going to be hurt by this really are the Trump voters.
Yeah.
He's hurting his own base.
It sounds like Rebecca's saying that the red states, the Sam Brownback kind of state, is all of a sudden going to take the money because there's some advantage now that there wasn't 3 years ago. Could you please explain it? I really don't know this.
The difference is in perception. 3 years ago or 7 years ago, when all this was coming down the pike, the Republican governors wanted to stick it to Obama. Now you see these unqualified successes in states like Ohio and states like Kentucky, where they did take the Medicaid expansion, where they have had very successful marketplaces set up. And other governors are going to take a look at that and know that there is actually not only a market, but a demand for good insurance, even for the very low income.
So wait, so what you're saying is that another 13 or so states are possibly going to take Medicaid expansion, knowing it's going away in 2020, so they're going to insure more people. And
It's
then
not
pull
that
the
it's
rug out
going
from under more
away,
people?
it's that it will get frozen. It's that you won't be able to enroll new people starting in 2020. They'll continue funding at whatever level it is you are at when they stop taking on more folks.
Right.
It's not that they're going to contract Medicare, it's that they're going to...
Medicaid.
But we're both
I
mad
did
at
it
this
too.
tonight,
Don't worry,
DJ.
I did it too. I did it too.
Basically, you can continue enrolling people under the expansion plan until 2020 and then no new people.
So what happens to people who lose
They're closing
their
the
jobs?
arc.
They're closing the
fucked.
door on poor people? That can't
Yes.
be right.
No, it's right. This
What?
is Paul Ryan we're talking about.
What?
Yeah.
Hold on. In defense of Paul Ryan. Hold on. In defense of Paul Ryan.
There's 4 words we don't hear too often. In defense of
in
Paul
defense
Ryan.
of Paul Ryan.
Okay, go ahead.
I bristle at the allegations that Paul Ryan in particular doesn't care about poor people. Paul Ryan was doing poverty tours in Chicago years ago, long before Mitt Romney tapped him for VP, when there were no cameras, no one was looking, solely so he could understand the types of problems that inner cities face. And he's really integrated his findings, I think, into his thinking. I understand that there's differences in how he has implemented it, but I want to defend him there for a second.
I'm confused at how you help poor people by propping up zombie banks with a $700 billion bailout that essentially freezes capital in place and doesn't let it get distributed far and wide by the failures that should have been allowed in the banking system.
Yeah, that's fair. So you know what I think is happening, and I think it gets to your too big to fail question, and also the big government for white people question. I think the Republican Party, I start to wonder if they actually do believe in free market policies at all. And is it fear that's preventing them from really pursuing those policies? Or is it that they don't buy it completely? Because if you look at it, they have the majority and they're not using it and they can't do anything with it. So I start to wonder if they think they just can't sell it, or if they're like, I don't know that this is real.
Helena, okay, can I respond there? I think part of the issue is that in order to pursue a lot of the items that a lot of folks would prefer to pursue on the right, they would need 60 votes in the Senate, or they would need to ditch the filibuster. They don't have the votes to ditch the filibuster because, frankly, it does serve a productive role in the legislative process, I believe. So, they can't get rid of that. So if they're going to do something else, they have to round up all 52 Republicans, and then they've got to find 8 Democrats who would probably rather shoot themselves than support a Republican plan right now.
Well, hang on. Our mutual political hero, or one of our mutual political hero clips, Ronald Reagan, repeatedly reached out to Democrats. He made it his mission to find Democrats who would support his agenda in one way, shape, or form. He refused to believe the notion that Democrats were automatically opposed to whatever he was doing. He would hear them out, and he would try to either accommodate them or try to win over folks who agreed with him. The notion that 48 Democrats are thoroughly hardened like epoxy on wood and can never come around to any sort of free market reform, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. I think you can get some from Northeastern Democrats. I think, Joe Manchin is willing to do anything the Republicans want to do because he doesn't want to get retired in West Virginia. But you can reach out to certain Democrats on certain issues, and I just think Republicans, for the most part, have forgotten how.
Well, I think there have been distinct political movements within Washington to make it impossible for the parties to cross the aisle and meet with one another. That was a strategy that Newt Gingrich employed, and that gets into sort of a weird facet of Washington history where, you know, the 3-day voting week came into play, and that ended the dinner parties and the cocktail hours.
Right. But going back to, but isn't the Republican Party themselves having issues with this bill? And there's people within their own party who are having, like, and they're the far right, the Freedom
the
Caucus,
Freedom
but
Caucus
not only not only the Freedom Caucus, but even moderate Republicans, like our own Ohio Senator, where's Molly? She'd agree with me on this one. Ohio Senator Rob Portman, has issues with it, that it's going to leave hundreds of thousands of Ohioans out in the cold. I hate Rob Portman.
There are four moderate Republican senators: Portman, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and I am totally blanking on the fourth. I've been blanking on it all week. Have all been concerned that the Medicare expansion cutbacks are going to be too detrimental to their states. I mean, Lisa Murkowski has a really strong point, because healthcare markets in Alaska are a completely different animal than pretty much anywhere else in the country, just due to the geography up there. And then you've got the Freedom Caucus, who wants to repeal Medicaid faster. They want to do it in 2018, which is genius. I think you should absolutely cut millions of people off from their healthcare right before the midterms. That is Freedom Caucus to the core, to just completely not care about political fallout. They're amazing in their consistency.
They're brilliant.
I mean, like, I actually admire them for sticking to their guns. They do not mess around. They are here for a reason, and they are going to continue to be for that reason. It's and I sit here and look at it, and I'm like, okay, sure, do it. I think that's great. Cut it off in 2018. See what happens. But, so there's a lot of question about whether this can pass out of the House. I think a lot of it comes down to how brave Paul Ryan is feeling about amendments and what kind of a rule he's going to bring it to the floor under. Because, the Senate's certainly not going to pass it as is. And I don't know how many amendments he's willing to consider. And I don't know. There's not a lot of confidence that this thing is going to happen the way it's currently written.
No, not at all. It's not the Democrats you have to worry about at this point. It's the Republicans. I mean, right now they're having more issues with that. So,
I mean, I think they'll be able to get it out of the House. It's going to be an ugly pitch when it goes over to the Senate, but I think they're going to get it out of the House.
You know who we, as a country, really have to worry about? The Justice Department lawyers who are going to overthrow this country if they don't all resign immediately. Obviously, I'm making a segue
resign.
Here. As we all know,
real quick,
46.
Before you do that, I'm just going to throw in. Did you know that I went to school with Paul Ryan?
You did.
I went to, I went to Miami. I went to Miami with Paul Ryan. I don't know. He was a big school, but I was at Miami at the same time with Paul Ryan. But and I never saw him around campus, and he never helped me, and I was very poor. So I'm just going to throw that out.
He never bought you a Starbucks.
If we're name dropping, I went to high school with Howard Stern, so there.
Oh,
I never saw
him.
I never saw him either.
I went to high school with Kristen Wiig, and I actually knew her vaguely in senior year.
Who?
Kristen Wiig from Saturday Night Live.
I went to high school with Maggie Doyne, whom some of you may not know, but all of you should know who she is.
Who is she?
Any takers?
Does she play
Maggie
Supergirl?
Doyne, huh?
Does she play Supergirl on TV?
She does not. She does something much better than entertainment. She went to Nepal and started an orphanage for like 500 children out there.
Oh my gosh, she sounds awesome.
She didn't go to college, though she had the opportunity to do so, and she is now the mother of like 49 Nepali children. And she was CNN's Hero of the Year in 2015. She's been on the cover of the New York Times. So she's lived an incredible life. And they're trying to make a movie about her. There's a Kickstarter, actually.
Woo!
So
send me the link for that.
A documentary. Yes. They have like 2 days left.
Okay, so now I have to ask, DJ and Cliff, come on, you guys had to go to high school or college with someone famous.
I
No,
just
not
hear
really.
crickets.
For the listening audience, you should see the expressions on DJ and Cliff's faces right now as they try and think of somebody famous that might have walked through their high school halls.
I never actually met the guy, but Mike Tomlin was William and Mary class of 95, 1 year behind me. I don't remember meeting him. He had coached the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I am just going to plead the fact that I'm 30, and so none of my high school classmates have had the chance to clamber over the wall of fame yet.
I'm 29. Maggie,
Damn
was 29.
millennials.
That's a
You're
great
so
answer.
lazy.
I love that.
Oh, my
What's wrong with you
goodness.
people?
I went to school with Nick Lachey also. I mean, come on.
Did you really? Nick Lachey's totally hot. I loved his reality show with Jessica Simpson.
Okay.
All right,
So,
moving
Person
on.
worse. The only
back to the
person worse
bloodbath
than
that's-
Nick Lachey is Justin Timberlake. I just have to put that out
Okay, we're all laughing and smiling way too much. Kevin, get back to the bloodbath
Okay.
at the Department
Back
of
to
Justice,
the U.S. attorneys resigning, quitting.
yes, 46 U.S. attorneys who did not go to school together, maybe one or two of them did, were all asked to submit their letters of resignation this week. So far, one has not submitted his letter of resignation. That's Preet Bharara in the New York City or the New York State Department of Justice, and he was summarily fired. Guys, what do you think?
I wonder if Trump did this, actually called up personally and said, "You're fired."
No,
doubt
it was Dana. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Dana Bente.
Benty, I
Benty,
think.
yeah.
Benty,
So,
whatever he is.
I mean, Trump here is trying to get at the deep state that we discussed a couple weeks ago, the deep state that may or may not be developing within the intelligence community and within law enforcement ranks. He believes that the reason for some of the leaks that are happening is because there are people in positions of power who have access for information about the administration and they are not his allies. This is not unprecedented, right? Janet Reno fired people too. It's the optics and the timing and the charged nature of the situation that's a bit different.
What I was given to understand is that Trump had actually given this Preet Bharara had assured him that he actually wouldn't be let go, that he wanted to keep him on. I think Trump was blowing smoke during the transition and just didn't know what he was talking about. And somebody, somebody smart. I know. Can you believe it? Trump making things up.
I'm shocked.
You're shocked. I'm shocked. It's shocking.
You don't think this has anything to do with the investigations Preet Bharara was doing in New York and has promised to do in New York to look into some of the conflicts of interest of the Trump administration?
Maybe, but I think Jeff Sessions would have wanted him gone regardless.
Yeah, he also has other enemies too. He
does. I would say two things. One, if we're going to call this supposed civil service resistance in the federal government the deep state, then I think we have to call the Trump administration the shallow state. It only makes sense. The other thing is the most important, I think, event that came in the aftermath of Preet Bharara's firing is the fact that it took less than 48 hours after the firing for Andrew Cuomo to start building a presidential campaign. And Cuomo has been in Bharara's crosshairs for the better part of a year and a half to 2 years. And in fact, one of the first tweets Bharara said was, "Now I know what the Moreland Commission feels like," which was the anti-corruption commission that Cuomo shut down because they were getting too close to his cronies and friends. That, I think, is what's actually most important, is that it has fed the delusion Andrew Cuomo has that he is actually of presidential material. God help us all.
I will say, for what it's worth, that setting Bharara aside, I'm not sorry to see some of the others go. The U.S. attorney for Eastern Virginia was the prick who had pursued Bob McDonald to the ends of the earth on a hard overreach and was rebuked, I believe it was 8-0 by the Supreme Court. So I said during the campaign, and this is actually I see it playing out, Donald Trump was the only presidential candidate of the whole batch who would actually fire Sir Humphrey, and that's what we're seeing right now, is that he is actually having his people go in and clean out the senior civil service who would have usually been allowed to stick around the way if the Democrats had their way in the Senate. These guys would be in there indefinitely, and I think they're just reaching the point of, okay, guys, time to go. We're not waiting any longer.
Yeah, but he's going to replace them all with a bunch of Bernard Woolies anyway, so it's not going to matter much.
Well played.
And finally, turning to Helena's home, or not home, but beloved new state of Texas, a federal court ruled that Texas used racial bias in drawing district lines there. Helena, do you have any insights into that story?
I do. No personal firsthand knowledge, but I do have some insight. There was a 3-judge panel down in San Antonio that issued this ruling. There were 3 congressional districts that the court deemed to be invalid because they were drawn based on racial characteristics. San Antonio in particular, there's a high Hispanic and Latino population. And so that was really the divide that was created with these districts. The judges here who wrote the opinion, Xavier Rodriguez and Orlando Garcia, I anticipate Trump might have a tweet about them and their ability to, issue legitimate rulings based on their heritage. But I think something that's
awesome.
Interesting here, I think something that's interesting here is, I'm not going to try and defend the Republican Party and the problems with race that the Republican Party has, and the problems with race that the Republican Party's had for a long time. What I will say is we shouldn't be surprised when we see things like this, because if you look back to what the Founding Fathers cared about, their concern was, or one of their concerns was restraining sin on the part of the government and restraining and working against the corrupting desire for power that government officials can have. And I think that when you see people doing things that are immoral and that are wrong in an effort to gain power and to gain influence, that's what the Founding Fathers were getting at here. So, the Republican Party is not above it.
Well, before we do the counter, Cliff, I actually have a legal question.
I probably don't have an answer.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask it anyway because that's who I am.
She's going to charge you though. She's going to bill you
$600
You're hourly, Helena.
$600 an hour.
I know that starting in the 1990s in particular, the Republicans they did it in my state when I was my home state, New Jersey. They essentially used the Voting Rights Act as an excuse to say, look, we want to ensure that minority majority districts really are minority majority, so we're going to go with 55 to 60% minority majority. And at the time, the New Jersey NAACP actually agreed with them. So what I'm curious about is how much of this is actually being driven by the fact that with Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act now thrown out, and so the notion that certain state, that the standard for federal scrutiny is out the window, and in the absence of a rewritten one, there is no standard. How much of that is districts that might have survived in the Section 5 VRA era are now looked at for the obvious racial gerrymandering that they are because they don't have the legacy of the Voting Rights Act to back them up in their nefarious activity?
Yeah. It sounds like you should be a lawyer, DJ. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Virginia went through a similar round of this, I'm going to say nonsense, about a year and a half ago, where they did a midterm redistricting because the court said, oops, the lines that you drew in line with the Voting Rights Act, where you were following the guidance you had at the time, are in fact unconstitutional. And, I've got a real problem where you've got these cases coming down, where in the Virginia case, it was really fun. All 11 congressmen, 3 Democrats and 8 Republicans at the time, signed off on the map. They said this is an awesome map. Well, as soon as the Democrats realized they could challenge the map and probably snipe at least one district, the 3 Democrats said, hey, that map we really liked a couple years ago? It's actually racist. We supported a racist map. We were wrong. Oops. Never mind the fact that it gave all 3 of them very cushy re-elections.
Hang on, Cliff. But the fact of the matter is, just taking a step back, the fact of the matter is the conservative wing of the Supreme Court for years, going back to the 1980s, 1990s, always had trouble with racial gerrymandering. They didn't like the fact that the Voting Rights Act allowed this sort of thing to happen, let alone encouraged it. I remember Rehnquist railing about it. I remember Scalia railing about it in his younger years. I remember O'Connor complaining about it, but they never had the votes to actually overturn Section 5, which they did have the votes to do in 2013, it shouldn't be a surprise for the courts to look back and go, okay, yes, this might have been legal then, but the law is different now, and it no longer holds scrutiny because it was based on a law that should never have been allowed to last as long as it did. So if Section 5 goes, these maps go too. That really shouldn't be a surprise.
All right. So thank you all for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/moreperfectunion podcast, and share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And if you'd like to join our political debate between shows, join us in our Facebook group, Open Fire Politics. We're all there, and we would love to see you too.
For the record, Molly's on spring break this week, and she asked if she could get some conservative Republican suggestions for tattoos. So please feel free.
I got one.
Is it Reagan?
Have her tattoo. No, have her tattoo the entire text from the American Health Care Act on her back.
And I just recommend a big picture of Cliff's face.